We are excited for this show today. So glad you could join us on She Speaks, which is sponsored by She Leads Michigan. We spend time talking to people of their exciting careers and what God has been doing in their lives. And today we are doing a segment called Heart and Soul in Business. So this will be people that have worked with God and He has helped them in their work. So we're excited to talk with Julie Holton, who is a 3-time Emmy Award winner in journalism and production marketing, and that will be an exciting conversation. We have a beautiful music number by Gene Watson, and then we will also be talking today to start with Toni Cooper, who is another entrepreneur in Michigan and has a great story of how God has led her through all different things in her life and has landed now as a consultant in her own company, president of her own company. So we're grateful today to have Toni with us. Thank you so much, Toni, for taking time out of everything you are doing to help us all kind of go walk with you in the journey God has taken you on.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you are now in a consulting business with other businesses, helping them to be effective, but you didn't start there. Can you talk to us a little bit about when you were even a child? And I understand you got into figure skating, which is kind of interesting, even though we just finished the Olympics, but it wasn't winter, but it still is always so beautiful and exciting to watch figure skating. How did you?
My journey it's an interesting journey, but my journey, I was an elite figure skater my whole life. So I skated from the age of 6 all the way on, highly competitive. And when I decided to stop competing, I mentored under my coach, became a skating coach, and then started helping to run ice arenas and traveling the country, helping ice arenas with marketing, building programs to just increase revenue and help their program overall, help the arenas get better. But truly my ultimate goal and where I ultimately wanted to go was when I was 16 years old. I listened to a gentleman named Zig Ziglar. I grew up on him my whole life, told my family that I wanted to be like Zig Ziglar, and I got to meet him, and he told me that I don't want to be Zig Ziglar. I just need to be myself and be the only one, the unique one. And I kept that with me. I did have the opportunity to work with the Zig Ziglar Corporation, get certified to train their materials and things of that nature. And throughout my life, from the skating all the way to today, I've always been in training, always been in the field of helping people be better, helping people grow, and seeing things that in a different way that most people don't see. So I'm excited about the journey, which has ultimately led me to here, which is running a company with, I have a few employees, a few independent contractors that work with me on my team. And we work with companies all over the US, helping them to literally engage the leaders to create an effective culture within the organization. And I love it.
Well, that is so exciting to help people see their own potential. I think in today's world, so many people are feeling shut down or maligned or shut out. And instead, you come alongside to help them see a better future.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's amazing to do that, to walk alongside leaders and actually make a difference in it, as opposed to, when I first started out in the training world, it was go in, teach a class, hope they got them information, leave, and have no idea if anything happened. And we've ran companies. I've been the CEO of a national park, and through all of those lessons learned has led me to where we are today, where we can truly help the companies look at it, figure it out. And I think I told you this before, but I think the most amazing part of it is how what you're teaching is really biblical principles. But because I work with a lot of entities that are in the federal government and beyond, you can't really talk about God. But the beauty is you can teach biblical principles without even people realizing it. So you're kind of planting seeds of truth. and you're teaching them and they're having these aha moments. And for me, I'm like, well, it's all there. I'm not teaching you anything new. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, you use the best instruction book there is, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
They kind of taste the success of what God puts together. And when you help people see that and they start to experience truth and how it works in their lives, that has to be so fulfilling. So you, it sounds like you have gotten promoted into amazing positions throughout your life that you maybe didn't even seek. But I bet there were probably a few times when things didn't feel so sweet and rosy, and you didn't just be handed a scepter and given another management position. Would you say you learned some things with difficult times in your life too?
Oh, come on, Nancy. Life is perfect. There's never any bumps. I'm just kidding.
I know. Please give us hope, Toni, that if we're in the middle of muck, there can be a good way out.
No, we have, I tell people every lesson that we learn and every story that we experience is truly a lesson to help other people and to be that transparent to do it. My life has always been about trying to prove myself and there are bumps in the road. Yes, we had a company, my husband and I owned a company that I hate using the word fail. I call it lessons learned. I said we got our PhD in business through it. But essentially, the business was hundreds of $1,000s in debt. We almost lost our home. We had family issues that happened from it, depression that occurred from it, anger, you name it, everything. When you reach kind of like a hole, I never tell people that you've reached the bottom because you really just don't know how far that goes. But when you've reached a hole, at some point you got to decide if you're going to climb out of it or stay in it. And to climb out of it, it really was through God that did that. And people always give glory to God, but I can tell you that it was 100% sitting down on my knees and having conversations with God and talking and trying to be the stable entity to get there. And then it was, when all of that happened and we started coming out of it, it was 2 years of trying to figure out what in the world am I supposed to do next. And in the meantime, had a baby. I have 2 boys now, but in the meantime, having a baby throughout that whole process. And then decided to take a role. It's an amazing role. I love the national park world. I got to be the CEO of the National Battlefield Foundation, and it was an amazing privilege. It was wonderful. I wouldn't take any of it away. At the same time, there was a ton of stress. I was working, 50 to 60 hours in it, and I wasn't having any time for my family. And mentors all around me kept, godly mentors all around me kept telling me, you were following a path that God had you on, and at some point you decided to turn right, and really you went the wrong way, and when are you going to get back on the path? And I just chose to ignore them, took this role. They all told me that I'm getting off the path that God set for me. And while they were right, and the stress led me to just say, stop, I've got to just take a step back, take a deep breath. And in that process, the opportunity to go back and train with large corporations, work with the federal government in a lot of different areas, and be able to instill messages that I believe in a way that I don't think I could have done 10 years ago. I don't think I could have given God's message the way that I can do it now if it weren't for those bumps, if it weren't for those problems. But Nancy, it definitely wasn't easy. Let's be honest. I mean, we're all going to hit roadblocks. We're all going to hit holes. We're all going to have stopping points. And how you handle it is what's going to make all the difference to the next step, and so on and so forth. And I can't say I handled it well every time.
Yeah. Wow. That makes us feel more like you are a regular person. To hear all of that. Oh my goodness, that sounds like there were times you felt really overwhelmed, but God did kind of send messengers into your life, and you kind of came out of your own battlefield with insight and a fresh outlook and an opportunity that you could use everything that came before. That is beautiful, and it's kind of a Joseph story that way. And
Yep.
so, yeah, beautiful. So as you said, you have a child, both children, I understand, right? So you have a family, and we have all the things that are going on in the world today, and you have your own business. How do you kind of balance all of this?
So it's balance. I find balance to be an interesting word because my mentor Julie taught me this. She says, "Are you ever truly balanced in life?" She goes, "If you were to look at a wheel, some part of that wheel is going to be flat in your life somewhere, based on the circumstance you're in and where you're at." And that has really held true to me, and I've carried that for a long time. That I'm not trying to balance everything equally. I'm trying to figure out what balance looks like in our family. And for me, and I say this to many people, for me, it's understanding your family mission and your personal mission and making sure that that always stays in the forefront. And so my personal mission is to truly raise two amazing, kind, godly boys. That's my personal mission. And knowing that mission, no matter what, everything that I do, every decision that I make always goes, is this following that mission or is it not? Now that's, I haven't always done that. God kind of does things and stops you to make you have those lessons learned where you have to get back and learn those lessons. But it's definitely not easy. I love when people say, "Wow, your life looks so simple." Yeah, well, just open up the curtains and come on in. And if I showed you the house right now, you would say it looks lived in. That's what it looks like. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Wow.
it's interesting. My husband works for the federal government and law enforcement, and so he works 10-hour shifts, and so it's just sitting down with my boys and the help, and honestly surrounding myself with people who are going to be there and lift us up. We have amazing family that we're surrounded with that help. So we homeschool them because of COVID and everything else that happened. It gave us the opportunity to open the door to try homeschooling. We love it. So we homeschool. We worked out a schedule that works, and I get to run a company. And the beauty of it is that when I travel to different organizations, sometimes my kids and my family get to go, so they get to see the world at the same time. But again, if you looked around, I mean, there are days where I've closed the bathroom door and cried on the bathroom floor and said I quit, right? And then there are days you wake up and excited for the day, and here we go. And if we can just recognize those things and just realize that every day is not going to be perfect and every day is not going to be bad, that's how we found balance.
Wow, that's beautifully said. I had that same kind of journey, always thinking at the next stage I'm going to have that perfect balance. But we are human beings, and we have emotions, and we have all the issues of life and things that happen that we can't control, and all those. But to have that type of overall sense that we are listening to God, following His direction, doing the best each day as He gives us insight and purpose, and building into the lives of those around us. It sounds to me like you have come to a place of always being a lifelong learner yourself. And
Yeah,
therefore, you model that to your
yeah.
kids in homeschooling, to whatever company you come to, that you don't have the absolute answer, but you can walk with them as you discover answers together. Would that kind of sound like you?
I would 100% agree with you, Nancy, that I'm always a lifelong learner. And I also believe 100% that we have to surround ourselves with people who are going to lift us up and not people who are going to tear us down. And so if we surround ourselves with people who are going to tear us down, your balance disappears, depression occurs. And so it's looking through different areas and saying, okay, this person doesn't need to be in my life, this person needs to be in my life, and finding those very important people that are going to be there, the willingness to help, the willingness to ask for help that we have to have. So yeah, not only do we have to be a lifelong learner, but we also have to be willing to let go of the fact that as women we have to know everything, and it's okay to say, look, I need help, or okay, you know what, God, I get it, I'll stop. And there was, do you mind if I share a quick story that I haven't shared with you that just popped in my head?
Please.
Sorry, do you
No,
mind?
no,
Okay.
that'd be great.
I'll tell you the story. This is an interesting. Well, to me, it's interesting. To you, you might like whatever. But anyhow, here's something interesting. So when I was a trainer for many years, and then decided to take on this role as the CEO of the National Battlefield, and it's a wonderful national park that we have here in Michigan, and it's fairly new, and so there's a lot of communication, there's stress involved, there's politics involved, and there's things of that nature. But something started happening, and I was losing my voice on a regular basis. And that, when people start losing their voice on a regular basis, that is not a healthy thing. People think it's okay. And then I started having a really strange scratchiness to my voice, and I felt like it was normal. So and then I started losing it to a point where I couldn't talk. And what was interesting about it is I went to a doctor who said, a specialist that looked and said, oh, there's nothing wrong, you're fine. Went to a few others that said different things. And the fascinating thing is, I looked online, my husband said, forget this. You want to be a trainer, you've got to figure out what's going on. Let's just go online and look at the top ENT vocal doctors in the country. And it just so happens that one of the top 3 happened to be in Michigan at U of M. And I went there, and come to find out, I had cysts on my vocal cords, but the cysts were very deep. And so I had to have very invasive surgery that normal people that get cysts removed, normally what happens is you get a cyst removed, a few days later, you can speak and life is good. Well, mine, when they went in, they knew it was there. They had to cut 5 times to get to it. So the doctor was determined, they wanted to give up, and he says, I know it's there. I saw it on the picture. I know the cyst is there. So they had to cut in 5 different ways to finally get to it and pull it out. But here's what's interesting, that led me, you know how COVID got people to slow down? Well, that forced me to slow down, because literally I could not speak a single word for 30 days. So for 30 days, I had to type into a phone everything I needed to say, or I had to write it down. So I had to go to work and run a national park without being able to speak. And so it forced me to slow down. It forced me to realize, what is my personal mission? You know, am I really having balance? So I call that a God moment, where I'm not saying God knocked me down, but God woke me up, right?
Yeah, right.
It
You had
was
30 days in the wilderness there.
exactly. And it was actually 6 months before I was allowed to speak at a normal rate. So after 30 days, the next 30 days was I was allowed to speak for approximately 15 to 30 minutes a day. And I was in intense therapy. So it's an awakening moment to realize that the thing that you cherish and that you use most, for my job all the time, was
Right.
taken away. And it really puts things in perspective, and it changes your mindset and makes you look at things differently. And I hope that everybody doesn't have to have experiences like that to be woken up, but many of us do.
That is so impacting. Yeah, exactly. And here we are on She Speaks. And now you have an opportunity to speak, and you've been given such a deep and beautiful message. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think, most people haven't gone through something that dramatic, but have found times when you did not have an opportunity to speak. And we can either get angry about it, or we can use it as a learning event and gradually develop the depth that when we are given opportunity to speak, we have a message. And that is so beautiful. So as you come into these companies, how do you help companies become better as organizations using all these things that you have learned? How does your company proceed?
So I like to say that it's simple, but really nothing's simple yet. I think that so many people make it so complicated. But generally what we do is we'll go in, especially if it's a company we don't know. Our whole business is built on relationships and referrals from others. And so we'll go into an organization and we'll do kind of a one-day training with their key staff. Always the executive team needs to be involved, whoever else they want involved, and we'll do some sort of training. Sometimes they'll tell me that they're having a culture issue. Sometimes it's a communication or character issue. we'll do a 1-day training. Our training is really interactive. It gets people to open up, communicate, and share things that they don't normally share, when you're just one-on-one interviewing. And what that gives us the opportunity to do is to kind of see what is really going on. What is the root of what's happening? Can we see things? And then we'll meet with the leadership team afterwards and say, here's what I saw. And are you seeing the same thing? And here's what we can do next. I don't want to come in and train and say, hey, all right, you had 1 day of training, everything's fixed, good luck, enjoy. So the day training is like step one to really understand what is it we need to do from this point forward and giving them a plan. And then our next step, if they want to continue going, is we'll do a full assessment. Our assessments are 100% customized for the company. So the questions are based on their language, so that everybody's speaking the same way. We make sure that they check the questions to make sure that they're what they want to know. And then we send those out, we take the data, we analyze it, and based on all that data, along with the training, along with interviewing, we come up with solutions. So the key is that we're not just going to give you a medicine to relieve the pain and say, okay, hopefully that helps. My whole goal is to really get to the root of how we can positively help an organization, whatever it is that they need in regards to internal culture. So it can be communication, it can be hiring, it can be engagement. A lot of times the leaders will tell me, well, our team is just not engaged or it's just negative. And what we find out is sometimes it's not really that they're negative, it's that they're not getting the right communication or the leadership's not communicating. So I don't believe in top-down leadership. We talk about everything starts from the middle and goes out from there. So it's like a full circle. Everybody has to be communicating the same language. Everybody has to be on the same page. And we help them do that. We help them develop their departmental mission and then build from that. So we work with individuals on a one-on-one basis, coaching them. We'll work with leaders as teams. Every company we work with, the solution is different. And the one that I'm working with right now, well, working with 4 big corporations right now, but the one is amazing. Last year when we started, after that training, we met with the leadership, the chief, and I told her, I said, there's a real issue here. I said, I don't know what it is, but there is a problem. And she argued with me, told me that there's not a problem, we're good, thanks for the training. And I said, no, there's something. And we had this whole conversation about it. And I knew that my job is to be transparent and honest, because so many people out there, especially in the training business world, are not. And if she wants to take it, great. If she doesn't want to, it's okay. And it took almost 3 months. And 3 months later, with us following up every month, 3 months later, she called me and she goes, you're right, there's a problem. I just don't know what it is. So let's figure it out. And then after coaching each one of their leaders on the senior management team, 1 hour a week, every week, for almost a year, even through COVID. So we were coaching them as COVID began, the whole transition to everybody going online, to suddenly everybody coming back to work, not suddenly, but the process coming back to work. It's been amazing to watch a company where, well, let's put it this way, 4 of their senior management were ready to quit and had their resignation letter in hand, to now they're happy to be there, they're working and they're communicating. And I'd love to tell people, yeah, it happened overnight. We're talking a 2-year process of getting there and now being able to say, all right, the reins are yours. It's yours. You can always call me. We'll keep following up with you. We'll give you some more insight. We won't charge you for any of that. But now you've got it. You know what to do. And let's keep it moving forward. And that's my favorite thing to do with these companies, is really get down to understanding how can we truly help you? And so that there's a real difference that's made in the company, not just something that's surface level.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's such a beautiful way to go about it. And I'm sure that key employee who contacted you eventually and was willing to do this learned so much about honesty and facing things, and that you can really work through things and come out better. That you just stuffing it under the rug is not going to make it go away. But it's hard to face because you're also trying to run a business.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, it's not that we don't know. And
Right.
as leaders, sometimes we just don't see it, and you need that outside person that sees things we don't see.
Mhm. But how invigorating and revitalizing to sense that you can change as a person and that the people around you can change process. And through all of that, you become lifelong learners in your business.
Right? You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. I mean, and that's what you're doing, with this radio. You're teaching and educating people, and everybody that's listening are lifelong learners. And that's what we should all be striving to be.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to talk with you, Toni. And we just really appreciate your example and your willingness to listen to God and knowing that he's got great business principles, and whether you understand him and his book or not, you can still benefit from his wisdom and truth and making investments in the lives of people, because you have turned out as gold, having gone through so much fire. And I know we're never done with the fire, but we do want to keep learning and keep getting better in whatever God calls us to. So thank you so much, Toni, for being here. We are so glad to have you as a part of She Leads Michigan and to have you on She Speaks. And we value your voice so much. And it's such a beautiful story to see how God has given you such wisdom and grace and restored your voice to help us all.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nancy. I appreciate it.
God bless you. We are now going to have music by Jean Watson, who is also one of our She Leads Michigan women. And we're just going to sit back and enjoy that. And then we're going to join Julie Holton, a 3-time Emmy Award winner in TV and news production and journalism. So stay tuned.
Awake my soul, and with the sun, the King of love now bids me come to shake off fear and joyful rise, my life a willing sacrifice. To God alone I lift my heart, and with the angels take my part. Who day and night unwearied sing high praise to the eternal King, singing Alleluia, Alleluia, singing Alleluia, Alleluia. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And when the darkness veils your face, we'll trust in your unfailing grace. By faith in you still we hold. Though battles rage, you won't let go. When crashing waves drown out your voice, your love we hear above the noise. No threat of war or tempest strong can match the joy of heaven's song. Singing Alleluia, Alleluia, singing Alleluia, Alleluia. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly Him, all nations, praise Him. Praise Him, all nations, praise Him. Praise Him, all nations, praise Him. Praise Him, all nations, praise Him. Everybody praise. Praise Him, all nations, praise Him. Everybody praise Him, all nations, praise Him. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Praise Him, all nations, praise Him. Praise Him, all nations, praise Him.
What a beautiful reminder that God is the best businessman around. He knows how to hire. He knows how to position people. He knows how to build business. He knows how to do whatever it is we need to pursue in our lives. And He's designed it all so intimately, so beautifully, and so successfully for us as we follow His path. So we are excited now to talk with Julie Holton. As I mentioned, she is a 3-time Emmy Award winner in news and journalism. She's been all over the country. She speaks at all different conferences. She has her own marketing company, M Connections. She has a program called Expert Connections she started this past spring in Lansing, and it's a TV show with WLAJ ABC. It's just hard to put it all into words in a short introduction, but we are so excited, Julie, that you've been able to take time to talk with us as one of our She Leads Michigan women and help us hear your story today with God.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Nancy. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
This is exciting. You have accomplished so much in your career as an individual, looking beyond what you see and having a vision for something special that maybe nobody else thought of. And that's an exciting creativity that you've been gifted with. Julie, where do you think that came from?
That's a good question, Nancy. It definitely didn't come from me. This is definitely all God, because, I think I've been doing a lot of reflection as you and I have been talking about what we were going to discuss today. And it really had me thinking back to when I was a little girl. And I think sometimes some of those most intimate conversations that I've ever had with the Lord were when I was, an innocent little kid who just didn't know the ways of the world yet. And I remember having conversations with God on my way to the bus stop, my walk in the morning on my way to school, and just, the free-flowing conversations where you're speaking your prayers out loud. And, and I've been thinking, I need to do more of that. As an adult, sometimes the world kind of steps in and changes us, and we have ups and downs and I just have thought, I think a lot of it started when I was just a little kid and didn't know yet the answer no, hadn't been, shaped by the trials and tribulations that would come throughout life, and just genuinely thought I could do anything because that's what God told us.
Yeah, right. I know, with the simplicity, that's that childlike faith, right? And life can kind of beat it out of us, and we try to be sophisticated and all of that kind of thing. But it really boils down to a little heart trusting a big God. And
Absolutely.
no matter how old we are, right?
Yes,
So-
and being able to let go of our own plans, knowing that he is the true visionary and that his plans for us are so much greater than anything we can ever dream of.
Exactly. That sometimes, we think we've got this perfect plan and then it doesn't work. And we have to decide, do we keep having a temper tantrum about that plan and turn against him and walk away and give up? Or do we really believe that his no is a detour on the way to something even better? And that is kind of a hard thing to learn at different stages and seasons in our lives. So how did you kind of start this vision in the world of journalism, Julie? Did you, as a child, think that journalism or news was something that interested you as you walked to the bus stop?
I did actually, Nancy. I was the geeky little fifth grader who, right around the time when Dateline came out on NBC, and Jane Pauley was my gal. I wanted to be just like Jane Pauley. I was going to report on the news and deliver all of those interesting stories. And I started, my mom, I'm sure, would love to tell you the stories or show you the videos of me as a young kid, kind of starting in fifth grade, reporting on the news in our neighborhood. I created my own newsletter that I would write out by hand in my notebooks, later graduated into, we had our first computers, typing it up. There was one year for, our youth group at church used to be in charge of the early morning service on Easter Sunday. And there was one year when our family was going to be in Florida. And so since I couldn't be there, I thought, well, let's just create a newscast and I can be the reporter on video. And so sure enough, my friends and I from youth group, we set all this up in advance, and I interviewed, the disciples at the Last Supper. And I was there the morning when the tomb had been rolled away. And really, thinking back on it, I would say that, yes, I knew as a young kid that I really had an interest in telling stories and really had an interest in being a part of kind of that TV world, recording things on video. But really now as an adult, I know that it was the adults in my life that fostered that creativity. I think back to our youth group leaders at church and all of the parents at church who allowed this group of kids, these eighth graders, to create a video and have a newscast, Easter morning service, to my own parents who would let me use their video camera, and my dad who would record us. So it's really incredible to think that, sure, I was strong-willed and knew what I wanted to do, but I had so much support from an incredible community around me that really encouraged me to be creative and to tell these stories.
How fun. Yeah, that video wasn't that easy to do back then. You couldn't just pull out your phone.
Right. No, it was a big camera we had to lug around. Which I'm very lucky because those tapes are hidden somewhere. They have not yet resurfaced, although I'm told someday when I get married, they might just resurface. So we'll see. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That would be a fun Friday night to just watch a few of those with a little popcorn.
Oh, Nancy, we made commercials and everything. One of my good girlfriends, Jessica, and I, we had the whole thing planned out. And this was back, if you think back to when the movie Space Jams was around, that soundtrack we used for the commercials. We just made up our own words and used the music. So all sorts of things about beating Satan out of your life. And it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that is awesome. Morality plays from decades ago, right? Oh, those are great ideas. So you also mentioned that there was a contest when you were a child that motivated you as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Again, the support that we get from our community. And these are some pictures we're looking at from when I was in high school. This was our newspaper class. I was one of the first freshmen ever allowed to join the high school newspaper. And it was because I had attended journalism camp the summer prior at Michigan State, and the advisor was my teacher at the camp. And so that's how cool I was as a kid. Yeah. I did go to sports camps too, but journalism camp, I went 4 years in a row. So that's what we're looking at there. But yes, looking back, when I was in 5th grade, there's an essay contest that's still ongoing in Michigan called the Michigan and Me Essay Writing Contest. And when I was in 5th grade, which was really for me a pivotal year in determining that I wanted to be a writer and liked telling stories, but I actually won the statewide writing contest that year. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, who was an incredible woman, is an incredible woman with an incredible story. She had 12 kids. My mom's the 9th of 12, very Catholic family. And after 12 kids, she decided that she was no longer going to be Catholic if it meant having children. That's our kind of running joke in our family. After 12 kids, she put herself through college. She went to school, went all the way through, got her PhD in women's history. She became a history professor. She studied at the University of Paris when I was in middle school in order to write her dissertation, and just an incredible woman that I learned so much from. Actually, I myself later went on to study in France for a semester. But anyway, when I was in 5th grade, I won this essay writing contest. As you can imagine, I have a lot of cousins. But out of all of these cousins, my grandmother actually bought me an engraved pen that I still have today as a prize, as a gift for winning this writing contest. And it was just that loving affirmation that I could do anything I wanted to do, and that, my talents were being recognized, and that I could, as a kid, it means so much that that someone believes in you and that you can pursue your dreams. And my dream was to become a journalist.
Wow. That was such a beautiful thing to give you. So inspiring. And it showed you had succeeded, but it also challenged you to continue to use that pen.
Absolutely.
Whatever God had for you ahead. So we mentioned at the beginning that you had 3 Emmys. I don't know how you earn Emmys in the world of journalism. You mentioned something about being in Minneapolis. Can you tell us that story of that Emmy award you got?
Yeah. So Emmys are, for any kind of daytime television shows, and newscasts are television shows as well. So there are regional and national contests that take place to win Emmys. So, and I do have 3 of them. 2 of them I got for producing newscasts, but one of them is actually a national Emmy that I earned. It's actually the one sitting behind me. I forget that it's there sometimes, but I earned that while I was in Minneapolis, because I was in Minneapolis, and there I am with my mom and my grandma standing next to the Mary Tyler Moore statue, which of course is in downtown Minneapolis.
Perfect.
While I was in Minneapolis, that's when the 35W bridge collapsed. And for those who remember, this was just a horrible, horrible tragedy where, we had dozens of people killed, hundreds that were injured, physically or emotionally, just scarred from that experience. What happened was right at the height of rush hour, there was some construction work being done on the bridge. And right at the heart of rush hour, just imagine that the main artery, the main interstate in your city, the bridge just collapsed into the water. I was working in the newsroom at the time. I was the 10 p.m. show producer, and my executive producer and I took some of the first calls. And at first, we kind of thought, like, what's going on? Are these some college kids, pranking us? But it was like we took 1 or 2 calls, and then all of a sudden the phones just all were going crazy. We happened to have a helicopter for our station, was actually near downtown at the time, because it was supposed to be the day of the new Twins baseball stadium groundbreaking ceremony. And so our helicopter was actually the first over the scene. So it was the first, look that we got at what had happened. And Nancy, I can tell you, it's, you know, images you'll never forget. You know, a school bus kind of dangling off the side of the bridge. We cars in the water. The kids on the bus were okay, but there, you know, there were many other people who were not, and it was just horrifying. But yet also, we're seeing this unfold live on TV, and it's our city. It's, you know, we often don't think about that with the journalists who are covering the news, but that was the bridge that I drove over every day. It's the bridge, the main bridge. I mean, there are lots of bridges in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but it's the main bridge that connects Minneapolis to St. Paul. And, you know, so, and then, you know, we had our, you know, I remember taking a call from one of our photographers' wives who had said, you know, he's not home yet. Is he, you know, where is he? And that's when it started to kind of sink in that this wasn't just a story. This was our own community that was impacted. Did I know anyone on the bridge? Were our own, you know, coworkers safe? What was even happening? And for me, that was a pivotal moment as well for a number of reasons, because one, you know, I'd covered hurricanes, I'd covered tornadoes and all sorts of natural disasters, all sorts of, you know, shootings and murders and kind of the typical news stories you think about, you know, fires and car crashes, and good stories too, of course. Yeah. This was something that was so incredibly hard hitting that we knew even in that moment that this was not going to, you know, go away anytime soon. There was so much, I mean, there was rescue work being done, and you realize then what a role the media plays in working with law enforcement and in connecting the important messages to the community. You know, we had someone from the Red Cross that was in our newsroom giving us updates, and, you know, you just kind of that vital information that people were waiting to hear, and we were their only way to connect them to that information. Yeah. So, you know, there were some, you know, kind of aside from the really personal impact of that tragedy, there were, you know, just some neat, kind of career highlights, I suppose, that happened. You know, I was the producer who coordinated the coverage that weekend when the president came to tour, and talking with the actual, you know, national crew in our helicopter and the anchor of, you know, the nightly news and things like that. You know, it's kind of like with anytime something big happens, your leadership has an opportunity to shine. And for me, that was something that really catapulted my career. I think I was, I don't know, I was in my maybe mid-20s when that happened, maybe kind of, yeah. And so life-changing experience for anyone. And for me, it drastically changed the course of my career and catapulted me into becoming an executive producer.
Wow. Yeah, that is close to home. And since you were on when that actually happened, you became kind of the mother of the story, right? And owned it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's things like that, you know, you reflect back on. Someone, I couldn't dig it up in time for today's broadcast, but someone in a different department at the TV station actually picked up a camera and took video of our newsroom within the first couple of hours of that event happening. And it was really interesting to look back on it because it's controlled chaos. I mean, it's literally every single person talking at the same time, answering phones, people running past, grabbing tapes, you know, and it's like somehow it all came together for 28 hours straight of news coverage. I mean, and everyone pitching in. Our main sports anchor was actually the first, reporter on the scene giving updates from police. And it was just like everyone jumped in to help. And I think that to me has been so significant in my life because, you know, kind of fast forward now to the pandemic and I have, you know, you realize, you know, some of these lessons you learn. And I think that's how, for my family and my team, I've treated the pandemic. You know, you just step in and you do what you have to do. You help other people. You focus on community before yourself. And that was a huge lesson that working in news taught me.
Wow, yeah. So God kind of used that to open your eyes to the potential of good in communication. And we often think, oh, it's 911, call public safety, but you can't call 911 without communication. And people need to hear what's going on wherever it is. And so the news is so critical, and how the news is communicated makes a huge difference in the emotional reaction of people and how they know going forward, the way it's crafted, the way it's presented. There's a lot of responsibility in communication.
There really is. And Nancy, I'm a big believer that God intended for us to live in community. And I know, that's why She Leads Michigan exists. And then what I love so much about this group of women is he really designed us not to live on our own or to carry out, individual missions on our own, but to really connect with other people. And, that's something that I saw throughout the news. That's something that I see continue to play out in my life today. But one of the things that I think made me so passionate and continues to make me passionate about communications and about the media is our ability to connect with other people. Now we're able to connect with people across the world in ways that we never were before. And I think it's why I'm so passionate about the need for the media to exist, to be digging for answers and asking questions and holding each other accountable and to higher standards. I also think that God gives us, in this very secular, media world, he gives us ways to connect people back to him. We can show the good in situations. Toni was talking earlier about planting seeds, even in the corporate world. And I really view that that's what I did all throughout my news career. What I do now as a business owner is really, I think that God plants those seeds and we start to water them a little bit and let him continue to cultivate them in the way that he wants them to grow in people's lives. And a lot of that happens with the media.
Yeah. Would you say that your faith helped you to be able to navigate through those situations in Minneapolis, but also in the pandemic, and how God led you in starting like your Expert Connections show?
Absolutely. Whether we want to admit it or not, it's always God that's guiding us. Because if we stray too far off that path, he's going to pull us back one way or another. And I've learned that the hard way in my life too.
Has always been perfect for you either, Julie?
I like what Toni said. If you could see my house right now, you would feel really good about how your house looks.
I know, it's like find the floor.
I have a podcast and the other day we were recording an episode and I'll share with you, I said then, God teaches us lessons whether we want to learn them or not. And there are times when I think like, okay, I am done learning. Like in news, we used to say, we're closed for news. No more news can happen today. My show is full. Yeah. Like just putting it out there, nothing else can happen.
Yep.
And there are times I'm like, Lord, I've learned a lot of lessons. Can I be done now? And he's like, nope, you've got a lot more left to learn. And that definitely, so my faith, I couldn't make it through anything without my faith. And I don't mean for that to sound cliche, but I can tell you when I was in Minneapolis, it's the 13th largest TV market in the country. And I started working there, I think I was 23 or 24. I think I was 24. And it was high pressure. It was like you're in the pressure cooker of a situation. And there were day after day after day where I'd go home just in tears, like, Lord, what am I doing here? Should I even be here? Where are you taking me? And interestingly enough, so Minneapolis, I started at a couple stations in Michigan, then moved to Richmond, Virginia, then Minneapolis, Indianapolis, before I came back to Michigan. And with each move that I made, I would have like panic attacks, like, Lord, what are you doing? It's completely out of my comfort zone to not be near friends and family. And with each city I moved to, I didn't know anyone. So that in and of itself was a huge leap of faith. And then to step into a career where, I don't know how many women sometimes feel imposter syndrome, or, the doubts start to creep in. And you're like, oh my gosh, when are they going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing? When really it's just, it's just Satan kind of creeping in there and causing you to doubt yourself. I mean, I experienced that over and over and over again. I had some good bosses and I had some bad bosses. And, time and time again, I just relied on my faith and would say, okay, God, I am here because you brought me here. And I just trust that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I think some of those lessons get a little bit easier as we get older, because we've also been through the downs. And so we know that we're going to rise again when times are tough. Yeah. And so that really helps. But absolutely. So many people have asked me, even with my business now. I remember someone asked me, you make it look so easy and overnight success. And it's like, whoa. Well, I'm glad it looks easy, and I'm glad it looks like it happened overnight, because that certainly was not the life I was living. So I think we have to keep that in mind, especially with social media, especially, with people who don't want to air all of the negativity, because, I find I tend to be an optimistic and hopeful person. And so I'm not going to share all of the negative things that happen or all of those lessons learned, except in positive, optimistic ways, hopefully most of the time. But just remember, there's always a story. And there are stories behind stories that we don't even know. The traumas in life that people go through that they just don't talk about in certain circumstances.
Yeah. Right. We don't start out knowing everything, right? And just like Toni had said too, you have to kind of go through the fire to come out as gold, and you kind of keep walking into one thing after another. But it is reassuring that other times God was faithful, and we trust him that much more in the next thing, hopefully, from having seen him work in the last thing. And that overall he loves us. Right. And he's walking with us.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Nancy. It's so true. And it's so easy to look at someone else's life and say, wow, she's got it all. I think we could say that with any of the women that are showcased on She Speaks, because you feature women who have just been led in beautiful ways and making big, they're big success stories. And it's interesting. I see Erin commented here. She says, I've been trying to remind myself of that as an adult. God's timing is always right, even if it's not our timing. And Erin, that is so true. I mean, you could look at my resume or my list of accolades and think, wow, she's got it all. But that is certainly not the case. And I have to remind myself on a daily basis that it's God's timing, not my own. And I think that that's true for many women. My sister and I sometimes, talk about this. She started her career later in life, and she started with kids young, and she has beautiful family, 4 young kiddos, love being an aunt. But in reverse, my career has been very successful, and I have not yet become a mom or a wife, and something that I, very much long to do. And, we often remind each other that God has a plan, and we just have to, keep in mind that what's success for one person may not feel like success for another. And so if there's one lesson that I can share with our women, it's that, and just to keep having faith that God will see you through, especially when you are following him and his plans for your life.
Thank you so much, Julie. We are so inspired by hearing from you and watching a Christian navigate the world of media. And to have you a part of She Leads Michigan is a wonderful thing for all of us. And it's been so inspiring to hear both Toni and Julie talk to us about God's ways in business and in helping us with timing and the fortitude and wisdom and all the things that he freely shares with us. So thank you so much, Julie, for being here today. And thank you all for listening and watching on She Speaks.